Erica's story started with this whirlwind romance that felt too good to be true. She thought she'd found her perfect happily ever after when she first laid eyes on Mike Scott. He had that casual charm, a smile that warmed the room, and a last name that seemed to open all the right doors. Erica didn't come from money, she came from a modest background where folks hustled just to get by. But when Mike put a ring on her finger, she believed she was walking straight into a fairy tale. Folks told her the Scott family was loaded, like old money kind of wealth, and Erica's parents were just thrilled their daughter snagged such a catch. The wedding was over the top. The Scott mansion boasted sparkling chandeliers and marble floors that reflected everyone's excited faces. Erica wore a gown that took her breath away, designed by some fancy boutique she'd never even heard of. She could barely recognize herself in the mirror, draped in lace and hope. But a few odd looks and hushed whispers popped up on the big day. She brushed them aside, thinking it was just high society folks being fussy. For a moment, she convinced herself she was exactly where she needed to be. Behind all the confetti and champagne, though, there were tiny hints that something was off. Erica's new mother-in-law, Margaret Scott, eyed her with this guarded stare, like she was inspecting a piece of fruit for bruises. And while Mike seemed perfectly caring in public, there were moments he'd go quiet or dismiss her questions, saying, "Don't worry your head about it." Erica shrugged it off because she was head over heels in love and she wanted to trust him. After all, love's supposed to conquer everything, right? But sometimes love just isn't enough. She had no clue how quickly her dream would start to unravel. Not long after the wedding, whispers about an heir took over the mansion. It was like the family's greatest wish and expectation was for Erica to get pregnant. Margaret kept making not-so-subtle remarks about baby names and future grandkids. She'd say things like, "It's the Scott family tradition," or "We need little ones running around these halls." Erica tried to brush it off in a polite way. Still, the pressure weighed on her. As months passed, every time Erica felt a little queasy or tired, the entire household would buzz, asking if there was some good news. But the truth was, Erica wasn't getting pregnant. She'd always assumed it would just happen, but it didn't. Margaret's polite reminders turned into stern comments. She'd say, "Our bloodline must continue," like it was some royal duty. Mike, caught between his mother's nagging and Erica's frustration, tried to play peacekeeper. He'd sit next to Erica on the couch at night, pat her hand, and promise it would all work out. But soon, even his reassuring words felt forced. Friends and neighbors also joined the chatter. At fancy events, people would nudge Erica's arm and say, "Isn't it about time?" She felt like her worth was tied to her ability to produce a child. And as each month passed, her confidence crumbled a bit more. She'd lock herself in the bathroom sometimes, just staring at the mirror, wondering if something was wrong with her. She'd read all kinds of articles online, try every bit of advice from fertility teas to special diets. But nothing stuck. Then came the snide remarks from Margaret. She'd invite Erica over for tea and drop lines like, "Maybe you're just not trying hard enough." And even though Mike tried defending her, it was clear that the family's patience was wearing thin. Erica's heart felt heavier each day, and she sensed that the fairy tale she once clung to was slipping out of reach. One evening, Erica overheard her mother-in-law talking with a distant cousin at a family gathering. Margaret's tone was downright cold, calling Erica worthless for not giving Mike an heir. Erica's cheeks burned with anger and shame. She tried to stay calm, but something inside her snapped. She walked right into that conversation, looked Margaret in the eye, and said, "I'm doing everything I can, but I'm not a baby factory." The room went silent. Margaret's eyes flared in shock and fury. The hush broke into murmurs and low gasps. People took a step back, forming this awkward circle around them. Margaret regained her composure in a heartbeat and spat, "You're ungrateful. We welcomed you into this family and you can't even fulfill your most basic duty." That word, duty, stabbed at Erica's heart. She tried to speak up, to defend herself, but her words got lost in the swirl of emotions. Mike came rushing over, attempting to calm things down. But the damage was already done. Margaret had made it crystal clear that Erica's value to this family hinged on bearing a child. And now, with the gloves off, she didn't bother hiding her disdain. Erica felt like she was being paraded around as a failure, a disappointment to a line of wealthy tradition. A few relatives tried to mediate, suggesting they all talk privately. But Margaret didn't care. She blasted Erica in front of everyone, airing out the family's grievances as if they were discussing the weather. Erica's humiliation was complete. She stormed out of the party, tears streaming down her face. Deep down, she knew there was no going back to the simple illusions of happily ever after. She just stepped over a line that changed everything and she had no idea where to go next. Just a few days after that blow-up, Margaret made it obvious Erica wasn't welcome anymore. She said in this icy tone, "We can't have you hanging around here with no clear contribution," as though Erica was some discarded piece of furniture. Mike stood by, watching the whole thing with a kind of helpless look, like he wanted to object but couldn't find his voice. That hurt Erica more than Margaret's words ever could. The eviction from the Scott mansion was swift and humiliating. She had to pack her belongings under the watchful eyes of the household staff, who'd been instructed to make sure she didn't take anything that wasn't hers. The irony was, almost nothing in that mansion belonged to her anyway. She'd come into the marriage with love, hope, and a few suitcases. Now she was leaving with a couple of duffel bags and no illusions left. A driver dropped her off at a modest motel on the outskirts of the city, and that was it. She stood outside the dingy building, suitcases at her feet, realizing she had no plan, no real savings, just a broken heart. She felt betrayed not just by the Scotts but by Mike, who'd stayed silent as his mother kicked her out. His parting words had been, "I'm sorry, Erica. This is how it has to be." That betrayal stung. In that moment, she felt as if her life had shattered into a million pieces. Gone was the lavish environment, the chance at a new family, the possibilities she'd once envisioned. She cried that night until her body ached. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. She was alone now, and she had to figure out how to stand on her own 2 feet again, even though it felt impossible. After those bleak first nights at the motel, Erica realized she couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for herself. She had to survive. She started by looking for a small apartment she could afford on her meager funds. It wasn't much, just a tiny studio with peeling paint and a cramped kitchenette. But it was hers, a space where she didn't have to worry about disapproving glares or resentful in-laws. She found a part-time job at a local coffee shop. It felt strange going from the plush life at the Scott mansion to steaming cappuccinos and wiping counters, but at least it offered some sense of normalcy. The early morning shifts kept her busy enough to block out the haunting memories of what she'd lost. Even then, there were nights she woke up in tears, dreaming about her old life. Between the whir of espresso machines and the chatter of regulars, Erica had time to think about what she wanted. She realized she'd been living in someone else's shadow for too long. She felt like a side character in her own story, doing her best to please a family that never truly accepted her. That realization both stung and set her free. One afternoon, she took a walk through a quiet park, letting her thoughts wander as she watched children chase each other on the grass. She remembered Margaret's bitter voice, the heartbreak of exile, and for a split second, she questioned her own worth. But the laughter of those kids reminded her that life goes on. She decided then and there that she couldn't give up, not when she still had a chance to reclaim some sort of future. So she took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and vowed to keep moving forward, no matter how tough the road might be. Erica found herself craving more than just survival. She wanted a sense of purpose, something to anchor her to a better tomorrow. So, she spent her free hours reading self-help books and motivational blogs. She also started going to a small gym near her apartment. It wasn't about getting revenge fit or anything, she just needed a place to sweat out her worries and feel like she was taking charge of her body again. At first, she felt out of place among the regulars who pushed weights and sprinted on treadmills with ease. But there was this friendly trainer, Jasmine, who noticed Erica's timid approach and struck up a conversation. Jasmine had a comforting smile and an easygoing way of explaining workouts. Little by little, Erica's confidence grew. She realized that pushing her physical limits also helped her mental strength. When she felt that ache in her muscles, it was almost satisfying, like proof she was moving forward, step by painful step. She also started journaling at night, penning down her fears and her small wins. In those quiet moments, she recognized that her worth didn't depend on being Mrs. Mike Scott or on having a baby. She was a person with her own dreams and ambitions, even if she hadn't fully figured them out yet. It felt liberating to see that in writing. Gradually, she began to hold her head higher. She'd smile back at regulars in the coffee shop who complimented her for remembering their orders. She answered calls from old friends without that knot in her stomach. And she even managed to join an online business course, thinking that maybe, just maybe, she had a future in something bigger than she ever realized before. She was reclaiming her self-worth one day at a time, and that felt like victory. Everything changed the morning Erica realized she felt off in a way she couldn't ignore. She brushed it aside at first, blaming stress or a weird diet. But after a week of unusual nausea and fatigue, she decided to buy a pregnancy test, more out of habit than actual suspicion. When the test showed a positive result, her hands shook so hard she nearly dropped it on the bathroom floor. Her mind reeled. She kept thinking, how could this be? The Scott family had cast her out for being barren, and now here she was, pregnant against all odds. A swirl of emotions engulfed her: fear, shock, a strange sense of wonder. She sank onto the edge of her bathtub, that little pink line staring her right in the face. Life had a twisted sense of humor. She confided in Jasmine, her trainer-turned-friend, who listened quietly. After hearing Erica out, Jasmine said, "Girl, this could be your new beginning." Those words lit a small spark of hope in Erica. She suddenly saw this child as a hidden miracle, a beacon of light in a life that had felt so dark. Still, she felt terrified. She had no stable income, no partner, and no clue how to navigate motherhood alone. But every time fear threatened to take over, she reminded herself that this baby was growing inside her for a reason. Maybe this was her chance to create her own family, a new legacy that didn't involve the Scotts' suffocating demands or their conditional love. In a moment of clarity, she decided she'd protect this child at all costs. It was a promise she made silently, placing her hand on her still flat belly, feeling a spark of determination she never knew she had. After the shock wore off, Erica entered this kind of secret nesting phase. She wasn't ready to let the world or the Scotts know about her pregnancy. She wanted to keep it under wraps while she figured out her next move. She started saving every penny she could from the coffee shop job, cutting back on any small splurges. No more takeout. No more fancy fitness gear. She'd need every dime to ensure her baby had a stable foundation. She scoured thrift stores for baby items, picking up things that still looked decent. She found a crib someone had barely used and got it at a fraction of its original price. Each item made her feel a little more secure, like she was building a safe harbor for her soon-to-arrive little one. At night, she'd read up on prenatal care and newborn essentials, her eyes wide with both excitement and nerves. Though she was scared, something about preparing for the baby gave Erica a stronger sense of purpose. Every bit of morning sickness reminded her that she was growing a life inside her. And for once, she felt like she was doing something truly meaningful on her own terms. She got in touch with a small circle of acquaintances, but she was careful about who she trusted. She didn't want any chance of word getting back to the Scotts. Maybe that was paranoid, but she had no reason to believe they wouldn't try to turn this miraculous news against her. So she guarded her secret fiercely. Day by day, her belly grew, and with it, her resolve. She might have been alone, but she wasn't helpless. For now, that was enough motivation to keep her pushing forward, step by quiet step, toward the life she was determined to build. As the months rolled on, Erica found herself more motivated than ever to improve her circumstances. She was determined to be a strong role model for her child, so she stepped up her game in just about every area of her life. She dove into her online business course, learning about marketing strategies, finance basics, and entrepreneurial mindsets. Each lesson sparked a new idea, and she discovered she had a knack for understanding market trends. Her evenings, once filled with loneliness, turned into study sessions. She'd sit at her small kitchen table wearing her comfy sweatpants, sipping decaf tea, and scribbling notes while her laptop glowed. The more she learned, the more she pictured herself running her own venture someday, something that was completely hers, not under the thumb of anyone else. That dream pushed her to network carefully. She reached out to local community groups that supported small business owners. She made connections with mentors who offered casual advice over coffee, never once suspecting she was a soon-to-be single mom. A few times she practiced pitching hypothetical business ideas, stumbling over her words at first but gradually finding her voice. In the midst of it all, she started thinking about who she really was outside the label of Mike Scott's wife. She was done living in the shadow of that name. She wanted to stand on her own merits. So, she experimented with a new look, cut her hair shorter, switched up her wardrobe to reflect the confident person she was becoming inside. By forging this new identity, Erica began to feel a sense of liberation she hadn't experienced in years. She wasn't just pregnant and alone, she was a woman discovering her power and preparing to step into a future she was shaping with her own hands. Erica's growing belly drew some stares as she went about her routines, but she didn't let it faze her. If anything, it pushed her to prove she wasn't some pitiful cautionary tale. She was a woman on a mission, defying every old-school stereotype that had once suffocated her. People in her small business community started noticing her hard work and fearless attitude. She'd show up to meetups or workshops, take diligent notes, and offer thoughtful suggestions during group discussions. Even with her baby bump, she carried herself like someone who knew she had a right to be there. She'd learned her lesson about letting others define her worth. And maybe because of that, she was more compassionate toward others who felt judged or overlooked. She'd strike up conversations with young moms, older entrepreneurs, or anyone who seemed a little unsure of themselves. There was a unique kinship in sharing stories of struggle and triumph, especially when you felt like the odds were stacked against you. Word spread about Erica, the pregnant woman who was always scribbling business plans in the corner of a cafe or emailing potential investors late into the night. Some folks were impressed, others were skeptical. But she didn't let either group sway her determination. She wasn't out to be a poster child for anything. She just wanted to build something real, something that could support her and her unborn child without relying on anyone else's charity. In public, she radiated confidence. In private, she still had moments of fear. But every time doubt crept in, she looked at her reflection and reminded herself she was breaking the very stereotypes that once held her back. She was no longer the timid girl who flinched under cruel scrutiny. She was Erica, soon-to-be mom, budding entrepreneur, and the architect of her own future. One of Erica's big breaks came when she pitched a small-scale idea to a local artisan market. She proposed a pop-up booth featuring organic skincare products, something she'd been experimenting with in her own kitchen using natural ingredients to soothe her pregnancy-weary skin. The market organizers gave her a shot. They liked her enthusiasm and the personal story behind her brand in the making. Setting up that first booth was nerve-wracking. She stayed up till dawn whipping up batches of lotions and balms, labeling each tiny jar by hand. When the day came, she stood behind her table, belly visibly round, greeting curious shoppers with a warm smile. To her delight, she sold almost everything before the market closed. People loved her products, and even more, they loved the genuine warmth she brought to the conversation. Buoyed by this success, Erica expanded her line, experimenting with new formulas and planning for the next market date. She also started an online store, just a simple platform, but it was a start. Orders trickled in, then slowly grew. Every time she shipped a package, she felt a jolt of pride. This was hers, built from scratch. No one could take it away from her. The momentum kept her going. She began seeing real evidence that all her studying and hard work had a payoff. Her hands were often sore from mixing ingredients and typing up blog posts, but the ache felt worth it. Each sale was another stepping stone toward independence. In these moments, she reflected on how far she'd come since being cast out of the Scott mansion. She was no longer the weeping woman on a motel curb. She was forging a new life, rising from the ashes of a broken dream. And even as her belly grew heavier, so did her sense of purpose and unstoppable ambition. Just when Erica thought she was navigating this journey on her own, she crossed paths with someone who changed the game. At a local networking event, she met a soft-spoken woman named Graceling who introduced herself as a consultant for small businesses. Grace had a gentle demeanor, but there was a sharp intelligence behind her eyes. They struck up a conversation about Erica's budding skincare brand, and Grace asked all the right questions: target audience, brand message, growth strategies. Impressed by Erica's drive, Grace offered to meet for coffee and talk more about possible. Everyone who offers help has good intentions. But something about Grace felt genuine. So she agreed. Over a coffee table littered with notebooks and product samples, Grace outlined a plan that could scale Erica's business faster than she ever imagined. She talked about social media campaigns, strategic partnerships with local boutiques, and ways to leverage Erica's personal story without exploiting it. It was refreshing to hear someone speak so passionately about helping an up-and-comer like Erica. Of course, Erica didn't have bags of money lying around to pay for big-time consulting. But Grace was flexible. She proposed a small retainer fee and a commission based on sales growth. It sounded fair, almost too fair. But for once, Erica decided to trust someone who believed in her potential. Working together, the two women formed an unexpected alliance. They pored over spreadsheets, tested product samples, and laughed at each other's horrible puns. Little by little, Grace's business savvy rubbed off on Erica, who realized she had a natural flair for entrepreneurship. With this ally by her side, Erica felt a new surge of confidence. She was no longer a lone warrior, she had a partner in the battlefield of business. A few months down the line, Erica's pregnant belly was more pronounced than ever. She'd been so consumed with her growing skincare business that she almost forgot her checkup was due. At the ultrasound appointment, she lay there watching the technician's face shift into a look of surprise. He paused, squinted at the monitor, and calmly said, "I'm seeing 2 heartbeats." Erica's own heartbeat thundered in her ears. 2? Twins? She nearly laughed, then cried as an overwhelming mix of emotions washed over her. She'd gone from believing she couldn't have children to carrying twins. It felt like life was throwing her a cosmic curveball, but she wasn't upset, she was amazed. In the following weeks, she told only a select few about the twin news. Jasmine was thrilled, hugging Erica and declaring her some sort of supermom. Grace reacted with practical excitement, quickly brainstorming how to adjust their business timeline. Erica herself oscillated between excitement and sheer panic. 2 babies meant double the expenses, double the sleepless nights, and double the love if she could manage to keep everything afloat. She also couldn't shake the memory of the Scott family's obsession with having an heir. Would they somehow find out? And if they did, would they try to claim her children or exploit their existence? The thought sent chills down her spine. But she pushed away the fear and focused on preparing for her new reality. She picked out 2 cribs instead of 1, attended prenatal classes, and read books about raising twins. Now more than ever, she knew she needed to succeed. She needed a stable future for her little ones. The twin revelation wasn't just a shock. It was a powerful reminder that she was on a path she never could have imagined, forging a family on her own terms. While Erica's belly expanded, so did her memories of those darker days. She sometimes woke up in a cold sweat, remembering Margaret's hateful sneer and the humiliation she felt in that fancy mansion's courtyard. She'd recall Mike standing there like a statue, letting his mother's words shred Erica's dignity. It was all in the past, she reminded herself, but the past had a way of creeping into the present. She also thought about the lies she told to keep her growing family a secret. She'd fibbed to acquaintances about her last name, changed her phone number, and dodged certain social circles that intersected with the Scotts. She didn't even update her social media about her pregnancy, partly out of fear. Some nights, she lay awake wondering if secrecy was the right choice. But the thought of the Scotts claiming any part of her baby's future was too much to bear. In quiet moments, Erica wrote letters to her unborn children in a little notebook. She told them how she wished things could have been, how she had imagined a big family Christmas, grandparents who doted on them, a father who showed genuine love. Yet she also wrote about the strength they brought her. She promised to protect them, to make sure they'd never be used as pawns in a twisted family game. Flashes of her exile returned like ghosts. The night she was forced out, the hushed gossip around the dinner table, Margaret's piercing stare. She wondered if any part of Mike regretted it. But dwelling on that question felt like a waste of energy. She didn't have room in her life for regrets or old resentments, only for the present tasks at hand. Still, even as she moved forward, the shadows of her past lurked, reminding her she might have to face them again someday. Amid all the emotional turbulence, Erica's skincare brand, now called Radiant Haven, began to take off. With Grace's guidance, they expanded the product line to include bath soaks, essential oil blends, and even a small line of natural cosmetics. Sales climbed steadily, and the brand's online presence grew through social media chatter and word of mouth. People loved the authenticity behind Radiant Haven, how Erica, a soon-to-be single mom, poured her heart into each product. Erica juggled business calls, product prep, and prenatal appointments with a fierce determination. She often joked that she'd gone from a timid housewife to a mompreneur on steroids. Grace ensured that distribution channels were locked in, reaching out to local shops that wanted to stock Radiant Haven products. They even started talking about national shipping, which felt like a huge leap from Erica's days of making lotions in her cramped kitchen. Behind the scenes, Erica carefully planned for her twins' arrival. She stockpiled supplies and made a flexible business plan that would allow her to work from home after giving birth. She wasn't naive. She knew sleepless nights and round-the-clock baby care would eat into her time. But she was determined not to let that halt her progress. Every time she looked at her swelling belly, she felt an urgency to succeed. She wanted her children to enter a world where they didn't lack for opportunities or comfort. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was just a mother's instinct. Either way, it fueled her. By the time she was nearing her due date, Radiant Haven wasn't just a side hustle anymore, it was on track to becoming a small empire, run by a woman who once thought she had no value beyond being an air producer for the Scotts. Now, she was proving them wrong, one product shipment at a time. News travels in strange ways, and success stories often draw attention from places you least expect. Erica started hearing whispers that the Scott family empire wasn't doing so great. She caught bits of gossip in business circles, something about risky investments that didn't pan out, a chain of bad decisions under Margaret's iron-fisted leadership, and some internal power struggles that threatened to topple their fortune. At first, Erica tried to ignore these rumors. She didn't want the Scotts anywhere near her life or her children. But as the gossip grew louder, part of her felt a grim sense of satisfaction. These were the people who threw her out like garbage, and now their empire seemed to be crumbling. Still, she knew better than to indulge in schadenfreude. She was too focused on building something of her own. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that this impending Scott family downfall might circle back to her. Maybe it was paranoia, but a tiny voice in her head said they might come looking for you. After all, Margaret had been obsessed with preserving the Scott lineage, and here Erica was, carrying not one, but two future Scotts. It was a recipe for conflict if the truth ever slipped out. She tried to keep a low profile, but Radiant Haven's increasing popularity made it hard to stay under the radar. Media outlets began running feel-good stories about this pregnant entrepreneur who turned her life around. Though she never disclosed her past, the success put her at risk of being discovered. In the midst of it all, her belly grew heavier, and the twins' movements reminded her every day that she had more than a company to protect. A storm seemed to be gathering on the horizon, and Erica could feel the tension mounting, even if she couldn't see exactly where it'd strike. One afternoon, Grace called Erica with a cryptic urgency in her voice. She'd received a strange inquiry from someone claiming to be interested in investing a sizable sum in Radiant Haven. The odd part? This person wouldn't disclose their full name or background, only calling themselves an interested party with substantial capital. Immediately, Erica's instincts went on high alert. They arranged a discreet meeting at a plush downtown restaurant. Erica walked in, her baby bump hard to hide, feeling the familiar mix of caution and curiosity. A representative showed up instead of the mysterious investor, a suave-looking man in a tailored suit who introduced himself as Mr. Hayes. He offered vague compliments about Radiant Haven's success and how they admired Erica's resilience. Mr. Hayes slid a folder across the table filled with what looked like a well-researched proposal. They wanted to buy a large stake in her company, promising to open more doors than Erica could imagine. The numbers were impressive. Still, something felt off. Erica asked pointed questions, trying to figure out who exactly was behind this offer. Mr. Hayes dodged each one, smiling politely but revealing nothing. Grace, who sat beside Erica, seemed just as uneasy. They both knew that if this mystery backer had ties to the Scotts, it could upend everything Erica had built. The entire meeting felt like a chess match, with Mr. Hayes offering alluring possibilities while Erica and Grace danced around the potential trap. By the time they left, Erica's heart pounded. She couldn't deny the appeal of a massive investment, especially with twins on the way. But she also couldn't shake the suspicion that this was too good, too convenient. Something about the whole thing reeked of corporate intrigue, and she had a hunch she wasn't done facing the skeletons in her closet. After that meeting, Erica couldn't stop thinking about the Scotts. The secrecy, the large sums of money, it just screamed family meddling. Every time she felt the twins kicking, she reminded herself she wasn't that naive, desperate girl anymore. She was a mother-to-be, an entrepreneur who'd built something from the ground up. If the Scotts were trying to creep back into her life, she needed a plan. She and Grace spent late nights plotting their next moves. They'd comb through the numbers, compare them with the business proposal, and do a deep dive into Mr. Hayes's background. What they found was a lot of dead ends and shell companies, typical of someone hiding their real affiliations. Erica smirked. She'd learned a thing or two about how the ultra-wealthy operated. This had the Scotts' signature all over it. Grace asked her plainly, "Do you want to fight them? Or just walk away?" Erica paused, remembering all the humiliation, the cruelty, the dismissal. She imagined Margaret's face when she'd find out about the twins. The thought of seeing that woman's empire crumble under Erica's newfound power was tempting, very tempting. But was seeking revenge going to give her peace? The more she mulled it over, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about payback. It was about setting the record straight, showing that she wasn't a disposable accessory in someone else's life. She'd earned her place in the world on her own merits, and if that meant confronting the Scotts head-on, so be it. So she decided to craft a counter-strategy. She'd let them think she was considering their offer, glean all the information she could, and then use it to secure her position. It wasn't simply revenge, it was self-preservation by design. And Erica was ready to play the game on her terms. Rumors swirled about an upcoming high-profile business gala, the kind where elite entrepreneurs rub elbows and make secret deals over champagne. Word on the street was that the Scotts would be front and center, desperate to reassert their dominance after a string of bad press. Erica caught wind that Mr. Hayes would be in attendance, presumably scouting for new angles or finalizing that shady investment deal. Grace pored over the guest list. "If you want to make a statement," she said, "this is the place." Erica swallowed hard, resting her hand on her growing belly. She was almost at her due date now, but doctors told her she might still have a few weeks. Going to a gala in her state seemed crazy, but there was a powerful symbolism to it. She'd show up not as a timid wife, but as a businesswoman with her own empire and a mother who refused to hide. There was a flurry of preparation. Jasmine helped her find a gown that fit her pregnant figure beautifully, a flowing design that subtly accentuated her belly rather than hiding it. "Own it, girl," Jasmine said, zipping her up. The day of the event, Erica felt a mix of excitement and dread. She knew this was a point of no return. She'd be stepping into the same circles as the Scots, potentially revealing her entire hand. Grace arranged for a driver and a subtle security detail just in case things got hostile. Erica arrived outside the lavish venue, heart-pounding, recalling her own wedding day with the Scots years ago. That same sense of grandeur lingered in the air, only now she was no naive bride. She was a contender. As she stepped onto the red carpet, cameras flashed. She drew a deep breath, reminding herself she had every right to be there. This was just the prelude to a night that would shake her past and define her future. As Erica mingled, she noticed whispers about a high-net-worth individual supposedly lurking in the background. This mysterious billionaire was rumored to be snapping up failing companies, possibly even eyeing the Scott Empire. She felt a flicker of curiosity. Someone else was hunting big game tonight, and it might intersect with her own plans. Dressed in her elegant gown, Erica made her rounds, politely engaging with curious onlookers. Some recognized her from local news segments about Radiant Haven. Others whispered questions about her advanced pregnancy, not daring to ask out loud. She offered polite smiles, but her mind was on the bigger puzzle: where were the Scots, and who was this secretive billionaire? Then she spotted Mr. Hayes at the far end of the hall, conversing with none other than Margaret Scott. The matriarch had that rigid posture Erica remembered too well, her face locked in a cool expression. The sight sparked a whirlwind of memories and a surge of determination. She wove her way closer, ears perked for tidbits of conversation. She caught snatches of words like liquidation, merger, and urgent capital. It sounded like the Scots were in deeper trouble than rumors suggested. Suddenly, a tall figure stepped between her and her line of sight. He had a quiet confidence, a keen gaze that swept the room like he owned it. People parted for him instinctively. Erica realized this had to be the mysterious billionaire everyone was buzzing about. She felt his eyes flick over her, a momentary pause as if he recognized something in her. Their gazes locked for a second, and a faint smile crossed his lips before he moved on, heading straight toward Margaret and Mr. Hayes. Intrigue flooded Erica's thoughts. Who was he? And how did he fit into the puzzle of her revenge and the Scots' downfall? One thing was clear: this man was a key player in tonight's unfolding drama, and she was about to find out why. As the evening wore on, the tension in the grand ballroom built like a coiled spring. Conversations were laced with wary politeness, and it seemed everyone was anticipating some big announcement or shocking twist. Erica floated through the crowd, her pregnant frame making her stand out, but she held her head high. This wasn't the time to shrink away. Grace, dressed in a sleek black outfit, sidled up to Erica, whispering updates. She'd heard that the mysterious billionaire, who went by the name Dominic Pierce, had orchestrated a private meeting with the Scots right here, tonight. "It's happening in one of the back rooms," Grace murmured, concern lining her face. "He might be finalizing a takeover." Erica felt her pulse quicken. A corporate takeover could mean the Scots would lose everything. Part of her relished the idea they'd finally taste the sort of humiliation they'd dished out to her. But she also sensed an opportunity. If Dominic Pierce was that influential, maybe he was the missing piece she needed to pull off her own plans. The crowd began clustering around a small stage where an official host stood, tapping the microphone. The lights dimmed and hush fell over the room. The host launched into a speech about unity, progress, and the importance of ethical leadership in today's business world. Erica could see Margaret Scott off to the side, her lips pressed into a thin line, arms folded. Mike was nowhere in sight, which made Erica wonder if he was simply absent or lurking somewhere out of view. The host ended by inviting the gala's notable guests to come forward for recognition. Erica watched as Margaret forced a smile, stepping onto the stage. Then, as if on cue, the room was abuzz with an undercurrent of anticipation. Everybody sensed something big was about to go down. Erica's heart thumped in her chest, bracing herself for this night of reckoning that would reshape everything. Margaret Scott began her address, standing at the podium with forced poise. She talked about the Scott family's legacy, their enduring commitment to the community, and all the usual buzzwords meant to reassure the crowd that everything was just peachy. But under the bright lights, Erica could see the cracks in that polished mask. Margaret's eyes looked tired, her smile fake, like she was struggling to hold on to whatever remained of the family's facade. Right then, the double doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open. A hush fell as heads turned. Erica, feeling her heart hammer, made her move. She walked in at a measured pace, her pregnant silhouette impossible to ignore, with Grace on one side and Jasmine on the other for added moral support. The trio drew every gaze in the room, but it was Erica who commanded the spotlight. Her once long hair was styled neatly, her gown flowed around her figure, and she radiated a calm confidence. Conversations hissed into silence. Cameras, both official and those from smartphones, flashed wildly. Margaret's jaw dropped, and she actually stopped talking mid-sentence. The shock was palpable. No one had expected Erica Scott, the exiled wife with no heir to give, to burst back onto the scene, especially not heavily pregnant, flanked by people who clearly had her back. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Erica looked straight at Margaret, letting her see the determination in her eyes. She was done being the timid girl begging for acceptance. Then, someone gasped, "She's pregnant with twins?" And the crowd erupted. Murmurs, gasps, and exclamations of surprise blended into a roar of commotion. Erica felt her pulse race, but she maintained her poise. This was her moment. She hadn't come to grovel. She'd come to show them all that the woman they'd cast aside was stepping into the limelight on her own terms. In the sudden frenzy, Erica stepped up to the stage, standing just a few feet from Margaret. Microphones picked up the tension like static electricity. Margaret's face went pale, her eyes fixated on E. Whispers of "Is that really Mike's child? And can you believe it?" floated around them. Erica briefly scanned the crowd and spotted Mike standing near the back, partially hidden behind a cluster of guests. His face wore a look of shock and guilt. Their eyes met, and for a split second, Erica felt the old ache of heartbreak. But she stood firm. Without waiting for an invitation, she took the microphone from Margaret's limp grip. The older woman was too stunned to resist. Erica's voice, though trembling slightly, rang out clear. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she began, her tone carrying a mixture of hurt and resolve. "But I believe I have every right to be here. After all, I did once belong to this family before I was thrown out." The crowd buzzed, torn between curiosity and sympathy. Erica looked down at her belly, then back at Margaret. "You wanted an heir. Actually, you wanted me to be nothing more than a vessel for your precious bloodline. Well, looks like you got more than you bargained for." A hush fell over the room, heavier than before. Margaret tried to muster a response, but words failed her. Her face twisted in disbelief, anger, and perhaps even a flicker of fear. Erica continued, her voice steadying, "My children will not be used as tokens or bartering chips for anyone. Not now, not ever. I came here tonight to set that record straight." Her heart pounded so loud she swore it echoed through the microphone. But this confrontation was long overdue, and for once, Erica felt like she held the power in the room. The silence that followed Erica's declaration was shattered by murmurs rippling through the ballroom. Cameras clicked, capturing every tense expression and every whispered comment. Mike edged his way forward, finally summoning the courage to stand by his mother, though he kept a cautious distance from Erica. When he spoke, his voice trembled. "Erica, I had no idea." Erica blinked, feeling years of pent-up frustration bubble up. "Don't lie. You chose to stay silent. You watched as your mother humiliated me, and you said nothing. That was the day you lost the right to say you had no idea." Her words hit him like a slap. He looked down, unable to maintain eye contact. Margaret's composure cracked. She tried to appear indignant, but her tone wavered. "We did what was best for this family," she said, though it sounded more like an excuse than a justification. The crowd wasn't buying it. Some of the guests who'd once championed Margaret's influence now looked at her with disdain, as if they were finally seeing the cracks in the Scott family's perfect veneer. Erica glared at the woman who'd cost her so much. "You wanted to protect the Scott name, but you forgot what it means to actually care about the people who carry it." She paused, glancing at her belly. "These children are mine. And if there's any Scott left in them, it's because I still hold onto some shred of compassion and dignity, something you tried to strip away." A sharp hush settled as Margaret's face flushed. In that moment, all the old betrayals loomed large. Erica remembered the public humiliation, the quiet heartbreak, and the devastating loneliness. But she stood here now, carrying the future literally within her, determined to show them that she wasn't the broken woman they'd cast aside. And in that heavy silence, one thing was clear: the Scots' reign of intimidation was over. With the entire room watching, Erica felt a swell of courage she never knew she had. She took a step forward, her posture unwavering even with the weight of the twins pressing on her lower back. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's night," she said, scanning the crowd. "I'm here to own my story. To let you all know that I, Erica, once a nobody in your eyes, have built a life and a business that stands strong without your name or your fortune." A few heads nodded in quiet approval. People who'd seen the headlines about Radiant Haven connected the dots. Here was a woman who'd been discarded by the powerful Scots and somehow transformed her life into a beacon of success. Margaret stood off to the side, fists clenched. Mike's eyes darted around, probably looking for a way to escape. But the bigger shock came when Dominic Pierce, the mysterious billionaire, sauntered onto the stage. He greeted Erica with a polite nod. Then, turning to the crowd, he said, "I've been following Miss Erica's progress for some time. I admire her tenacity and vision. In fact, I was considering an investment in Radiant Haven." A wave of excitement rippled through the onlookers. Dominic's endorsement meant a lot in these circles. He continued, "The Scott family and I have been discussing their financial woes. They hoped I'd save their sinking ship. But I find myself more inclined to support an entrepreneur who knows how to stand on her own." Those words landed like a hammer blow. Margaret's face fell, and Mike looked like someone had yanked the floor from under him. Meanwhile, Erica just stood there, heart pounding, as she realized Dominic's involvement might be the key that sealed the Scots' downfall and paved her way to an even brighter future. In that instant, the room witnessed a moment of poetic justice. The power balance shifted. Erica had ascended from outcast to someone worth backing, while the Scots, once the pinnacle of high society, teetered on the brink of collapse. The night escalated quickly. Dominic Pierce seized the microphone, his poised demeanor commanding everyone's attention. "Business is about vision, and the Scott family's vision seems outdated," he said, casting a fleeting glance at Margaret. He then laid out a deal that made the whole crowd gasp. He planned to buy the Scott company outright. Not just invest, but own it, lock, stock, and barrel. A murmur spread as people realized what this meant. The once mighty Scots would be left holding almost nothing, their years of grandeur replaced by a humiliating sell-off. Margaret looked on, her face blanching. She sputtered, "You can't do this. You have no right." But Dominic waved his hand dismissively. "I have every right. Your board members have already been in talks for weeks, desperate for a lifeline. And now you see how a lifeline can turn into a noose if you're not careful." Erica watched with a mix of shock and awe. She hadn't expected such a ruthless maneuver, but she couldn't deny the satisfaction of seeing Margaret finally experience what it felt like to be powerless. Meanwhile, the cameras flashed and a hushed excitement filled the air. This was historic, a legendary family empire snatched away in the span of a single gala evening. But Dominic wasn't finished. Turning to Erica, he said, "Of course, I'd love your input on the reorganization. Perhaps Radiant Haven could be integrated as a sister company under my holdings. You're an asset to this business community." The offer, delivered in front of everyone, sounded almost like a coronation. Erica's mind spun. This was huge, bigger than she'd ever aimed for. She felt the twins kicking, as if reminding her to stay grounded. Slowly, she inclined her head, meeting Dominic's gaze. "I'll consider it," she replied, voice steady, wanting to make it clear she wasn't going to be anyone's puppet. Margaret let out a strangled sound of protest. But no one rushed to her defense. The tables had turned and the Scots' once unshakable legacy was slipping through her fingers. As the reality of the takeover settled in, the Scott family imploded. Relatives who'd hung onto Margaret's every word started muttering about her mismanagement. Some stomped away in anger, others gaped as if they couldn't believe their cushy lifestyles were suddenly at risk. Margaret tried rallying them, urging unity, but it fell on deaf ears. Their faith in her leadership had shattered. Mike stood at the edge of the stage, watching this chaos unfold. He looked like he was seeing ghosts. Erica walked over to him, her heart pounding from both the high drama and the weight of her unborn children. "I never wanted it to come to this," she said softly. "But you left me no choice." He swallowed hard, eyes flicking between Erica's face and her pregnant belly. "They're mine, aren't they?" he asked in a voice laced with regret. When Erica nodded, his expression crumbled. "I'm sorry. I was stuck. I was afraid of losing everything." She almost pitied him. "And in the end, you lost it anyway," she replied quietly. "But you lost me first." It wasn't a jab, just a statement of fact. A tear slipped down Mike's cheek, and for a moment the arrogance he used to wear like a badge was gone. Margaret, noticing their conversation, stomped over, her voice harsh. "Are you two conspiring against this family? How dare you stand here and—" But Erica cut her off. "Enough. You can't manipulate me anymore, and you can't hide behind your precious family name." Gasps rippled through the onlookers as Margaret's rant died in her throat. For the first time, people saw her as she truly was. A desperate woman clinging to a crumbling legacy. The fractures within the Scott family were laid bare for the world to see, and no amount of money or influence could patch them up now. Just days after the explosive gala, Erica found herself summoned to a makeshift boardroom meeting at one of Dominic Pierce's newly acquired offices. Despite her advanced pregnancy, she refused to miss this confrontation. She'd been preparing for this moment ever since she was exiled, and she wasn't about to let a little discomfort stop her from seeing it through. A cluster of stern-faced executives sat around a long table, papers spread out in front of them. Dominic occupied the head seat, looking calm and predatory, like a lion surveying its territory. Across from him sat Margaret and a handful of Scott loyalists, desperately trying to negotiate the terms of their downfall. Erica and Grace took seats along one side, silent observers for now. Margaret launched into a tirade about heritage, loyalty, and how the Scotts deserved better terms than a complete buyout. Dominic let her finish, then simply countered with a barrage of facts, figures, and charts that exposed the company's dire state. Every time Margaret tried to regain control of the narrative, Dominic calmly batted away her arguments. Then, out of nowhere, he turned his attention to Erica. "You have a stake in this," he said. "Perhaps more than anyone else in this room. Care to weigh in?" All eyes shifted to her. Margaret's glare practically burned a hole through the table, while Mike hung his head, clearly out of his depth. Erica inhaled, feeling the twins shift. She stood, bracing her hands against the table. "I think the time for power plays is over. If the Scotts want to survive in any capacity, they have to accept real change. That starts by acknowledging the damage they've done, to people like me, and to their own reputation." Her voice didn't waver. She looked Margaret straight in the eye. "You can't bully your way out of this one. The numbers don't lie." A shocked silence followed. In that moment, Erica realized she'd come full circle, from an outsider begging for approval, to a woman whose words could determine the fate of the entire Scott empire. In the aftermath of that intense boardroom clash, the Scotts and their allies had nowhere left to hide. Dominic made it plain: accept the buyout or watch the company file for bankruptcy. Margaret was cornered. She'd lost her leverage, and with every passing moment, her once unbreakable grip on the family dynasty loosened. Behind closed doors, a swarm of lawyers hammered out the final details. Erica didn't stay for the entire legal circus. She left once it was clear the Scotts had no real hand to play. On her way out, she caught sight of Mike trailing her in the hallway. He looked defeated, shoulders slumped. "I know I can't fix what I did," he said, voice cracking with emotion. "But I want to be part of our children's lives if you'll let me." She paused, tears pricking her eyes. Part of her had dreamed of a supportive partner, a father who'd stand up for them. But that ship had sailed the day he stood silent in the face of her humiliation. "I'm not shutting you out," she said at last, "but you have to earn that place. You can't just decide now." He nodded, tears glistening, and she turned away, heading for the elevator. She wasn't sure where they'd land, but it wouldn't be a simple forgiveness story. Outside, the crisp air hit her face, and she felt a wave of relief and sorrow all at once. She'd fought so hard for her independence, for her children, and for her dignity. Revenge had been sweet, watching Margaret finally answer for her cruelty. Yet there was a hollow ache too, because so much had been lost in the process. On the car ride home, she touched her belly and whispered, "We're almost there." And it wasn't just about the end of a toxic chapter, it was the beginning of something new, a future shaped by her own terms and guided by the lessons she'd learned through hardship. Months later, the world looked entirely different. Erica gave birth to 2 healthy baby boys, Daniel and Ethan. Holding them in her arms, she felt a profound sense of wholeness she'd never experienced before. All the pain, betrayal, and sleepless nights paled in comparison to the miracle of these tiny, perfect lives. She brought them home to a cozy nursery filled with warm light and soft blankets, a sanctuary far from the echoing marble halls of the Scott mansion. Radiant Haven soared under Dominic Pierce's mentorship, though Erica maintained full creative control. They signed distribution deals that put her products in chic boutiques and larger retail chains alike. Financially, she was secure, able to provide for her babies without living in fear of someone else's whims. The Scotts had all but disappeared from the public eye, their empire absorbed and rebranded under Dominic's portfolio. Margaret, stripped of her influence, retreated to a secluded estate. Rumor had it she blamed everyone but herself. As for Mike, he visited Erica occasionally, gingerly holding his sons. He was careful, almost reverent, as though afraid any wrong move would shatter this fragile arrangement. Erica let him in, but kept boundaries firm. Over time, he seemed to realize he'd have to earn her trust every single day. In quiet moments, Erica stood at her window, watching the sunrise, remembering how lost she once felt. She wasn't the naive woman who entered a lavish marriage, nor the broken soul who left with nothing. She was a mother, an entrepreneur, and a survivor who refused to be defined by someone else's standards. As the sun's rays spread across the sky, warming the nursery walls, she breathed in the promise of a new dawn. Daniel and Ethan cooed beside her, and she whispered to them, "This is our beginning. We're writing our own story now, free from any chains." And in that soft morning light, a triumphant new era truly began.